Hello and welcome to the Musical Instrument Investigator. Today we are on the website of Apollium, which is an auction house based in France, and we're going to look at their latest sale of musical instruments, which is happening between the 16th of April to the 26th of April 2021. This is a new auction house to me. But Max, who you remember from a couple of videos ago, introduced me to this website, and he is joining me today. Hello, Max.
Hello.
Thank you very much for joining us again.
No problem at all. Very glad to be here.
So just a quick thing about this auction. As we usually say, check the terms and conditions on this. Looks like 25% buyer's premium, which is including the VAT. Obviously, if you're outside of Europe, then there'll be extra charges. If you're in the UK, you probably get charged 20 different things for whatever reason. They'll just keep bouncing it back and use Brexit as an excuse to charge you 70 times the amount, something like that. But anyway, but yeah, check all those details out. I'm sure they're a good, reputable auction house. So, but check the details anyway. Yes, without further ado, let's have a look at the catalogue and see what we can find. I think this catalogue has a few different things going on, from bowed string to kind of other woodwind instruments, etc. So we can skip past these beautiful kind of photographs or whatever they are. We'll go straight into the instruments. I think that's what everyone wants to see. We'll just quickly see if we can translate this. Ooh.
And if you don't mind, you can leave screen sharing on. So just kind of have so that I can be sure that we're on the same page.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, let me just quickly do that. That is a good idea. Okay, so let me just quickly refresh this. Okay, see if we can translate.
If you translate, just click on that little Google Translate button next to your next little star on the.
Oh, here, yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Let's go. Hopefully we're in. We are in. Right. Bit of a delay to the beginning, but it's all good. Right. Right, a French violin made by Chevrier, which bears the mark, an iron mark, Chevrier Paris, 1860. It says. It's got a length of 360, golden varnish, breaks at the heel.
Missing bit to the bass F hole.
Okay, let's have a quick look.
That would definitely need some work, but the table is actually pretty complete, I would say.
Yeah, that's got a good chunk, so that will need a bit of work. Looks like there's a bit of damage to the button, potentially, and this is quite good pictures. The on this website, it's not too bad. It's actually quite a nice scroll on that. I quite like that. Okay.
Very typical 19th century French word.
Now we have a German violin, anonymous, 19th century, two-piece maple back. Looks like some restored breaks in the table, 358mm length. Have a quick look at some of these pictures. Of any interest to you, Max, or not your...
Not yet.
Okay. Yeah, it looks fairly... I mean, it's an interesting scroll. But...
and it's... I guess it's strange in a way that you can still tell it's definitely German.
Yeah. Yep, that's interesting enough. A French violin, probably by Joseph Gaffino. So let's have a quick look at that. Are you still with me?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Looks like we've lost the translate for a second there. That's very strange. Okay, not sure what's happening there.
Yeah.
Anyway, a French violin.
It's funny that after seeing a lot of French catalog, I can somewhat translate it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've kind of.
So it's probably by Joseph Gaffino,
Okay.
around 1740 to 1750. Well, actually, my translation is off too, and red varnish, not sure what the other ones mean.
Yeah, 357
Oh,
length of back.
2-piece back, 357. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's somewhat of a famous maker, I guess. So be a good deal.
Yeah.
For the lower estimate.
Yeah. Looks. Yeah. It looks like it's 6,000 to 8,000 euros. So it shows a bit of kind of provenance there of the maker.
The neck graphics, the scroll graph is pretty well done, but very unfortunately for this auction house is that it doesn't show you side of the instrument, so you can't really see the setup or the arching.
Yeah, that's true. It looks like there might be some kind of repaired wormholes on the top, potentially. I'm not sure if that looks potentially like it could be a worm track.
Or it could be just a varnish retouch. Not too sure.
Yeah, it could be. There's also something here on the back, like here, looks a bit like worm marks, like tracks on the neck, but I'm not sure. But anyway, it looks interesting enough. Let's go to the next one. Oh, my translate options decided to come back. That's good. German violin made by Paulus Aletzi, which has a label. Bavarian luthier. Various restored breaks, including fracture at the bottom. 355 golden brown varnish.
And the translation says core probably means sound post, because the French word for that is, I think that's how it translates to. So a bit unfortunate for this one that it has both front and back sound post crack, but I would say it should be pretty well repaired, but can't really see what's inside.
Yeah.
One of my top lots, I may try to bid on it.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. If anyone else watches this video, probably not until after the auction is finished, but don't outbid Max.
Yep.
Don't do it. Let the man have this violin. Yeah.
It does look like it's in some pretty good condition for an 18th century violin. It could be the original label. So
yeah, no, it definitely looks an interesting one. So I can understand.
Did a little research on this maker. There doesn't happen to be a lot of this stuff around, so this will be even kind of a rare instrument. And for German violins of this age, it's rare to see some sort of a red varnish on the golden ground, because this is almost a bit of a practice exclusive to the Italians at the time. Okay. So either it's a result of a revarnish or just some really nice varnish.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's quite interesting then. Well, then a 3,000 to 4,000 estimate isn't actually too bad then. So that has real potential. Well, good luck with that, Max. Yeah, that's an interesting looking instrument there for sure. Right, lot 21, French violin, made in the entourage, or I guess, or circle of, you might say, Andrea Castagneri, 18th century Parisian violin, has a kind of Galliano kind of label there, or something going on. Golden brown varnish, various breaks, including one in the sole, which I believe that's got to be the sound post, isn't it? Sole, because a lot of people say the sound post is like the sole of the violin, so I would have thought that must be that. Traces of worm, 356mm. It says room at the table and at the back. I presume that means like it's open, I guess, on the table and on the back potentially.
Because we know these are translated from French, so I'm not too sure. Let me see what the French word may actually mean. Mm,
It's quite a nice, quite handsome looking instrument there.
yeah, just unfortunately, I don't think this is the work of Castanelli, but I guess it's very close.
Yeah, well, it
So,
says kind of circle of, isn't it? So someone that might have passed the workshop or something like that. That's how vague kind of circle of it is, but it looks, yeah, it looks interesting enough. So
definitely, one of the typical 18th century French work that you also see a lot on Torrizio.
yeah, quite like the scroll on that. Next one, a violin, interesting violin bearing a label of Joseph Guarnerius. One piece table, red brown varnish, 362, so it's quite long. Let's just see the graph there, have a quick look.
A pretty well made scroll.
Yeah, it's quite nice, nice detail. Yeah, it's quite a nice looking instrument. Not too bad estimate there, 1800 to 2000.
They're just not sure what's going on in the back. There are these stains or worm tracks. Not too sure.
Do you mean these kind of long lines here?
Yeah.
It looks weird. It kind of, when I first saw it, I thought it was a crack, but now it kind of looks a bit like a varnish streak, but that's a bit kind of concerning in a way.
Yeah.
So you probably want to look at that a bit closer if you're interested in that instrument. Unless you're unable to because of COVID, then just spend your money and take your risk.
Yeah.
Right, 23, French violin, Anquiaume family, bearing an almost illegible iron mark of Anquiaume or whatever. I'm probably pronouncing that so bad. Mirecourt, that looks a bit like those kind of Chanot cornerless violins, I suppose. Brown varnish, 365. That's pretty long. Do you like these cornerless kind of violins?
It's just unfortunately just completely not my type.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, there must be a few people that play some of these instruments, but
yeah. There is a cornerless Strat that Joshua Bell played for a few years.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, when you have a Strat that's been properly restored and kept in good condition, it has certain kind of beauty to it. But even when I'm looking at that instrument, probably the most expensive cornerless violin, it's just the aesthetic. I just don't get it.
Yeah. No, I understand. Right, well, onwards to the next one then. Another French violin, unsurprising for a French sale. Baroque instrument made in the second part of the 18th century, two-piece, with light waves, light figuring, golden brown varnish, various restored breaks, 356. Let's have a look at that.
If you look at this from the back, I think the button is a little concerning. You can see that it's been very much worn off.
Oh, yeah, it's quite reduced in size from what we would expect to see.
Yeah. This will be the kind of instrument where you need a luthier to put an ebony crown on it.
Okay, yeah. You'd probably have to, do something with the heel of the neck as well, I presume.
Because it seems like there is no neck graft, so this could be the original 18th century neck, which explains why it's being worn off so much.
Yeah.
Personally, I've never encountered an instrument with the original neck, because I know that back in the time, the neck Okay, now I see why, because it does say it's a Baroque violin.
Yeah, so presume. I mean, yeah, I mean, I would assume. Well, yeah, I don't know enough to know if some of these earlier instruments had very kind of short buttons like that or not, or what's kind of happened there. I've seen a few instruments, like older instruments, or some of the kind of like lesser quality instruments, I suppose, from uh, Central Europe from kind of early 19th or kind of tail end of the 18th century that have kind of smaller buttons, but I'm not really 100% sure if they've been modified or not.
I would personally like to think that it's been worn down, but this instrument as a whole, it's in some pretty good condition. You can see that it's been very well preserved, and since they claim it's a Baroque violin, so I assume it may even have the original bass bar and the original neck probably. So, if you're into historical performance, this will be the kind of instrument that would interest you.
Yep, definitely. And that, to be honest, if it does sell for around 2.5 to 3, that's not a bad price, really.
And there is also a potential, of course, to modernize it, give it a new neck, new bass bar, and everything.
I think that you would have the Baroque police on you pretty quickly suggesting that. Uh,
Absolutely.
but yeah, there's endless possibilities still, although I think you could probably buy something already modernized uh, for the same money. That might be kind of a
There are
better
also
investment.
yeah,
But yeah, definitely potential. Yeah, it looks curious. Another French violin here, the by Chapuis, by Nicolas Chapuis. Stamp on the back, several cracks, 360 length. That looks like it's saying something. Once again, I've got like the dodgy translate keeps on disappearing, which is quite annoying. I'm not sure that's trying to say kind of something Baroque original. But
there are some big cracks just going through the entire front and back.
yeah,
These are closed crack or even open crack. So
this is like Baroque on a budget. So if you have no money and you have a luthier friend, or if you are a luthier and you want to quickly cobble together a Baroque violin, but you can't spend like €2,500, and you don't mind your violin buzzing a bit, then you can get this one on a budget. It's interesting varnish going on there. I kind of like it in a way.
yeah.
I also prefer the price. If I could have the other one at this price, then I think I'd be happy.
Because my knowledge on these instruments are quite limited. So, if I'm to see this in person, I would have thought that it's a cheap 20th century work. But,
Yeah,
these are legit 18th century French instruments. So, if they're properly restored, I guess they could be worth a little bit.
yeah. I think a lot of these instruments, like from the Chapuis workshop, and I've seen some people talk about this on forums, some of the varnishes look actually quite cheap and modern, but they are actually original varnishes, which is really quite interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, look out, people. If you see like a violin with like a Chapuis stamp and it looks like it's quite new, and maybe investigate it a bit further, because it could well be like an 18th century violin, just like a lower grade
Mm.
one. So yeah, it's interesting. Well, onwards again. Another French violin, another Chapuis, and I've got my translate option back again, so it's to disappear every few seconds. Um, Two-piece maple back, brown varnish on golden background, Verisol brakes, to be restored, 362 millimeters. So this seems to be like a higher grade of kind of, well, it says spirit of Chapuis, but this seems to be have been maybe a higher grade instrument at some stage than the other one we were just looking at. But
Yeah.
obviously, it's in an absolutely terrible state.
Mhm. If you look at the back, I think there's just some horrible repair going on at the button.
Right, what we like to call like the brick, basically.
Yeah.
Just looks like someone's inserted a brick into the thing. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I think really, like the amount of money that you'd have to spend to get this kind of up to standard, I
Mhm.
just don't really think that it's cost effective personally.
I guess this would be the kind of instrument you'd buy if you were a new luthier into restoration. You want to give yourself a fun project to work on. This
Yeah,
wouldn't be bad at all.
yeah, I guess it's a bit of a labour of love, really. Although I think, to be honest, having watched quite a few auctions, I think you could probably get a better deal for better money.
Yeah.
I feel that the estimate on this is a bit high,
Yeah.
but
And the thing with all these 18th century French makers that they're able to attribute them to a certain maker, but they probably didn't really make them. Another French maker, forgot the name, but they would attribute so many instruments to that name, but it's somewhat just kind of all in the same style instead.
mm. Well, let's carry on. A German violin by Ludwig Glosol with the label. Um, looks like 358 back. Some kind of cracks in the table. Let's have a quick overview. It's got quite a stunning back, I have to say. In general, the kind of the wood choice is quite
Yeah.
striking. The varnish.
The workmanship on this thing, it's really up to standard, I would say.
Mm. Yeah, it's very well made. You can see in the details. Yeah, it looks like a quite a nice instrument.
Yeah, if you look at the purfling, the corners, you can tell this is a lot of there was a lot of attention that went into this instrument, and especially a really interesting detail is that if you look at the back, you have both pins hidden under the purfling. This will be a feature you see on violins, Strats, or some just higher end instrument in general.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. You want to kind of hide those things rather than actually try and make them noticeable.
And to be honest, for an instrument this new, I'm actually not sure how old this one is, but I feel like when a modern maker does this, you don't really need a pin there anymore. The way that we construct violins,
Mm.
you just put it there just to kind of show off your skill.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Guarneri model. Yeah, I think that could be quite a nice instrument for someone. Definitely striking. Another German violin here. I'm not sure why it just keeps on constantly getting rid of my translation here, but
Like every other lot, it pops back in.
yeah. Oh well.
Because both of us are using Google Chrome. When your translate is up, mine's up too.
Yeah.
And when you for the other lot, mine just disappears as well.
Okay, here's a German violin, probably made by Leopold Wilhelm, which has the label for Leopold Wilhelm. Tight paw spruce. Various table breaks repaired. To be restored. 353 back. This is like quite a popular maker if it was to be by this maker. I think a lot of people like instruments by this maker.
Not too familiar, but I guess the front is just your standard kind of 18th century German Steiner style instruments, similar to like a claw.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a market for these instruments. Definitely needs a bit of work. Well, it says they're repaired, but you'd probably want to check inside to see how good those repairs are.
There may the corners may need a few inserts. The purflings need some attention, and just some general cleaning. So it it will be kind of a demanding repair project, but this one will definitely be a lot more promising than the few other ones we just saw.
Yeah, I think aesthetically it's not really doing it for me as such, but it's it has charm.
Yeah.
Now we have an Italian violin by Alfredus del Lungo with the label 1944, 360 back, so not so old. Looks quite well made.
Yeah. It's funny. I've seen a modern Italian violin made by a Florence maker that's very similar arching to it. Traditionally, you don't really see Italian makers making this kind of arching, but it seems like some of them do work in this style. There, to be honest, quite a lot of these kind of modern Italians floating around. They're not the most stunningly looking, but these are, I guess, good entry points to Italian violins.
Yeah, I think if you're buying into the whole Italian is best kind of thing, as many people seem to, then I guess this is your chance to get one for not too crazy money, and it already has some age to it, I suppose. So it's potentially a bit on the larger size, so that might be difficult to sell in the future if that's what you were looking to do. But yeah, I'm not too 100% sure about the top, really, from a kind of grain point of view, but it's a bit streaky to me. But or the varnish combination of the varnish and the grain, it looks a bit like a football pitch when they've kind of do the grass, like cutting it one way and then cut it the other way to give the nice effect. Not sure.
I'm not a luthier, but my theory is that the front may have been left unvarnished for a while, so that the kind of the UV light and the sun kind of already stains it before they varnish it, and it's a very transparent layer of varnish, so that kind of sun stain on the wood is showing through. That's my theory, but I could be completely wrong.
Well, yeah, something's definitely happened there for sure. So, yep, an Italian violin. So a French violin by Georges Cohn with the label. So kind of dark red varnish, 358 back. You see a lot of these kind of it's almost the colour of like the Medio Fino kind of violins, isn't it? A lot of these French violins have this dark red colour. I don't find it particularly attractive myself, but I think some people do like it.
It's almost like French violins at this time kind of comes in two flavors. One is a bit of a orangey gold varnish. Another one just is sort of a dark red.
Blood red. So, yeah. But still potential for someone.
I mean, the workmanship on this is actually pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a well-made instrument. A Mirecourt violin, a French violin again, 362 back, so quite long.
This would be, that I'm looking at it would be a bit of a lower end Mirecourt instrument.
Yeah.
Low, long, but for French violins, this will be normal, I guess.
Quick look at the scroll. It's fairly tidy. The pictures on this auction are very clear. It's a shame there's not a few more of them. So, a French violin by Thomas Pages, 2001, modern work. I actually quite like this instrument from the kind of the shape of it. There's something that it does to my eye, and my eye quite likes it. Although a friend of mine pointed out that the peg box is a bit weird.
Yeah.
This kind of splays out, and there's some weird things going on with this instrument. The varnish is like a bit bizarre, to be honest, but I kind of like it in a strange way.
It's interesting for you, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just attracted to things that are wrong. So, in that regards, like, this is kind of up my street, to be honest. But, yeah, an interesting one.
Personally, what I really don't like about this one is the way that the perfing channel is done. I just feel like, well, I mean, it's pretty clean, but it's just not sure. Something just looks off the way the corners are done. And the perfing channel, the way it's being digged, and just my opinion, it's pretty harsh, I would say.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
It kind of looks to me like it's got a bit of a shelf round it. It looks like an old piece of furniture.
Yeah.
It's it's interesting. I quite like it, but I can see how people might not. But,
and the peg box, I think that is done intentionally. I just don't know who would think that this would be a good idea.
Well, there's a potential here for someone that wants a cheap modern French violin. You could probably get it for quite a cheap price. It might well sound quite good. 357. It's a fair length, so wouldn't be the worst thing. Worth trying if you can in the auction. A violin, interesting violin, with a mark for Stelio Rossi, red brown, craquelle. 360 back. Have a quick look at the back. Nothing too exciting, really, is it? This one.
But it's I guess everything is pretty well within standard, I would say.
Yeah. So we can.
Has the kind of cheap antiquing varnish that I kept talking about. Anyways, there you
go. French violin by Francois Lejeune. Iron mark for that. 360 back, quite long. Looks fairly standard. Any thoughts on that one?
Bit of a setup issue I noticed. I forgot what it's called. That little bit on the top of your on top of your fingerboard. The thing. This is my thing where I never memorized.
You mean the nuts?
Yeah, the nuts.
Yeah.
They're a little too long, or they've been filed the wrong way.
Yeah, there's something a bit odd going on there.
There are a lot of violins that have issues here that have been kind of just overlooked. I've shown instruments to luthiers where everything seemed fine, then they look at the nut and they would work on it a little bit, and it seems like different luthiers also have different understanding of how this part should be done. But this one definitely looks a little too long.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And there are a few nails on the back.
Yeah, into the button, just a bit worrying. Okay, another violin, 357 back. Says Alfredo Gustala. I think this once again is potentially nothing. The craquelle on the varnish again. Quite a nice back actually on this one.
Just personally speaking, this kind of varnish just has almost like an association with lower end instruments, because the last few times I've seen an instrument with this sort of varnish, and they're all kind of Eastern European mass produced. But then the thing with these instruments, that if you look closely, they're fine. There's nothing, workmanship is fine. But compared to the other one, this has a nut that's too short.
Okay, yeah, we're kind of, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, there's always something going on.
Yeah, so the unfortunate thing with auction is that almost all of these instruments, doesn't matter how well they look, there always seems to be something with a setup that you could work on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think there's very few of them are kind of in fine playing condition straight away, really.
But I guess the fortunate thing for us is that a lot of people throw these instruments to auctions because they don't sound good. They feel wrong because there's actually something wrong with the setup. But the violin itself are actually, it worth a lot. So
yeah, exactly. Sometimes I think that there's some violins which go to the auction because they don't sound good, but like you say, there's things that people haven't noticed that need to be changed, and that could be having like an effect on the sound. So sometimes you can change those things and suddenly the violin sounds amazing. So
absolutely,
sometimes violins and other stringed instruments have demons, the buzzing demons, and sometimes you just got to try and chase them around and find them, and if you can get them out, then you're into a winner. I did buy a violin once, which is, I mean, it's not the greatest violin, but it has some interesting parts. But it noticed that underneath on the tailpiece had like a massive crack, but it wasn't completely obvious. So then kind of switching that out, I think it made like a massive difference, really. So things like that sometimes you don't notice.
Yeah, so the ideal deal that you will want to pick up on auctions, that there's no hard problems on the violin itself, that you already kind of have a plan on how you want to repair it.
Yeah.
There.
Yep. Exactly. So we're on lot 36. French violin, Mircore 359. I don't think we need to spend super long on this. One piece back. It's like fairly attractive. Violin of Germany. This is 1950. 359 back. I think this is another one that we probably don't really need to spend too much time on. Do stop me if I'm passing through any ones that you want to talk about a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, this one, the setup looks pretty good, so I guess it will be one that you can just pick up and play. So other than that, it's all pretty standard, I would say.
Yep. Another French violin, probably Mircore.
And it's actually Mirimond, which
sorry, yeah, you're
actually
right.
Yeah. famous maker. I don't know why, but for the past few months, I've seen this name just kept popping up. Technically, these instruments do fetch quite a price in the United States. So, but it's very possible to pick them up for cheap in France. And I guess this will be a case of that. Personally, it's a little too long for me, but other than that, it's your standard French master violin, I would say, with the very rounded scroll, black lining, very nice looking back.
Yeah, it's quite pleasant. Like you say, it's a bit long, 362, but potential investment for someone wanting to ship it over to the US.
Absolutely.
Oh, and talking about the US, we've got an American violin here by Henry Richard Knopf with stamps and label, with a bow, I think it's trying to say. 355 back. Let's have a look. Interesting varnish on this one. It's almost quite a pinkish varnish in places. In the back's very pink.
Yeah. The varnish was probably made this way when it came out. I would say it's quite interesting, especially after, almost 100 years. This thing's made in 1929.
Yeah.
Still kind of new, but what's really what I was going to say is that this lot actually comes with a bow, but they don't really show you what the bow is.
No, exactly. Yeah, you have to kind of guess. I mean, I guess Amati do that sometimes as well. They sell violins and it just says comes with 2 bows, and like if they say it comes with a bow and the bow's not sold separately in the auction, then you know it's going to be a crap bow.
Yeah, or maybe you get lucky sometimes. I never bought any violin that came with a bow. A bit of a curious issue I see is that the belly of the scroll kind of near the fingerboard just kind of goes straight down, which is not a typical feature you see on violins in general.
Okay, yeah.
I guess if it works, it works. It could be mistake during the construction of the scroll, or just style of this maker. Not too sure, but doesn't look like an issue.
Yep, good, well spotted. Spanish violin by Jose Contreras.
Here we go.
We don't see many Spanish violins, especially 18th century ones, so this one is interesting.
Especially a Contreras, because he is, they call him the Spanish Stradivari. And even the Strat even has posters of his violins made, has posters of his instruments. One of his violin, because if the Strat makes a poster of a maker's instruments, all the other ones are Stradivari, Montagnana. So that this guy is considered to be one of the greatest. And very fortunately, his instruments are not fetching nearly as a high price as some of the Italian works, but it's definitely beyond your average 18th century Italian instrument.
Yeah.
If I had the money, this will be an insanely great deal.
Yeah, quite an investment opportunity there. I think the scroll is very elegant. I like it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I guess one could even mistaken it. If someone had never seen other works of the maker, this may as well be a 19th century French copy of Cremonese instruments. Yeah, I would be convinced. But it's an original 18th century work, which really is quite amazing.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity. This could have potential be the contender for the pick of the auction, I think.
Yeah. Somehow I don't think that the measurement of the back is mentioned here.
No, it doesn't seem to be. That's curious. Maybe it's like ridiculously large. Maybe it's like 370 or something.
Yeah.
But,
I guess for the maker, it probably should be fine.
Yeah. I think you can probably contact them and ask them. It's probably just an omission, isn't it? They have so many things to add. They probably got so excited about the fact that they're selling this at the auction, they forgot to add that information.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a nice one. A French violin by Amédée Dodouin. We've looked at some of these instruments before with the label. You're kind of interested in these ones, aren't you, to some degree?
I'm, for these so-called Dudon or Colimazon, they're just they buy these white instruments. They buy them in, without varnish from various miracle workshops. So you can see that they're very similar to some of the Le Victor View model of Colimazon. They're all Guarneri model with very weird arch and very, very good wood. I would say the workmanship is definitely has a certain standard to it. For a lot of French violins, first thing I personally look at, a lot of people don't mention this, but almost all higher level French instruments, the standard way, if you look at the back of the scroll channel will come all the way down and leave almost no triangle some of them had that little triangle region towards the end of the
Yeah,
score,
that
which has
sometimes people call the delta.
yeah, if you see a French violin that's made to this standard, you know that it was definitely considered a higher grade instrument. And the back is just, I mean, the material used on these two don't, because there are a bunch of them. There were a bunch of them available on Amber. We didn't see one last time, but you will see a lot of them being offered there. Unfortunately, you don't even fetch the same kind of price as a Colin Mazan, but I would say this is definitely above standard compared to most of the late Colin Mazan workshop works. Yeah, so it will be a good deal if you're looking for a nice, French violin. But one unfortunate fact is that I don't think these instruments will sound particularly good because of the kind of arching they'll be doing at the time. This thing, this auction doesn't show you the side, but my guess is that in between the F holes, the arching is almost straight up flat. So that in a way, if you remove the bass bar, you could even see through the F holes and to see to the other side, which make it sound very loud, but people don't really like the kind of sound quality to it. But after all, it should be a pretty projecting instrument, and it also depends. Between instruments could have a different sound depending on their setup. So not bad at all, I would say. And you can see there are already some bids on it.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably quite popular already. So I think that these instruments are popular with people. I mean, I guess you can get a good instrument for a good price, really.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's not your kind because you would like something older and more interesting.
Yeah, I just want something weird and old, and cheap, preferably. So, budget, whatever. There's not enough cracks on this for me to buy it because it's going to be too much money. I need something with multiple cracks across it. But this might not be the auction for that. I think the standard's too good for me. But there's some good stuff for sure. Let's go on to lot 42. Another French violin by Pierre Sylvestre. Let's go for the translate while we can. So it's 1796. Well, it says on the label. Head by another maker. Certificate from Serge Boyer. So it's a bit of.
Make a very quick comment. I just find it very funny that they estimated this instrument at the same price as the Contreras almost. Contreras they estimate for a slightly higher price, but I mean Sylvestres are desirable. It's funny. There's even I was reading a Teresio article on Violin and all these French makers that Sylvestre during his time or during the 19th century was considered superior to Violin. But the reason that they never fetched the same price probably because Sylvestres are relatively much rarer than the Violin. There are thousands of Violin out there, but only like a few hundred Sylvestres. Yeah, so after all, I think this is a nice instrument.
Yeah, have to say that it's not really doing anything for me personally, but yeah, I mean
it's all shiny, so I guess it's definitely not your thing.
So it's quite a high estimate for something which is like doesn't have its original scroll.
But I think it's a beautiful scroll, so it could be from another French maker, but can't really tell who that is.
Yeah. Well, there's a potential instrument for someone interested in Pierre Sylvestre. The French violin, Miracle. Copy of Jean-Baptiste Villaume, 360 back. Doesn't really look like the highest of quality copies. In my opinion, in my humble opinion. Shall we move on, or
Yeah, of course, yeah. There's nothing too interesting on that one.
violin, probably Italian, with a label Concerto Puglisi, Catania, 1923, 360 back. See, a lot of the instruments at auction are this really kind of like 360 plus, aren't they? When you get down to it, there's a lot of bigger instruments.
That, you know, that's common, probably because, you know, I have many friends telling me that an instrument ends up on auction, there's normally something wrong with it, and they'll say for most people, anything above 359 would not play very well.
Yeah. Yeah, there's I've seen like a Bernadelle, which is like very lovely instrument, but it's so big. The back is like 364 or something. I don't think anyone can actually play it properly.
Mhm.
They can play it like a little bit, but it's just uncomfortable after a while.
Yeah, and you know it messes with your intonation too. There's all those Nicolas Vion as well. They're just, you know, monstrous. They're huge.
Let's carry on. An Italian violin by Giacinto Bortolesi, probably killing that name again. This lot is subject to a restriction. Interesting. Does that mean like an export restriction or something like that?
I
don't know.
think it's the rosewood fitting.
Oh, okay. For like a CITES thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It could also, I think that's what I mean, because I don't think, from the sound of it, I don't think it is because the instrument is temporarily imported. Oh, actually, no, that's a UK thing. This is in France.
Yeah.
I don't think that. So I guess it's probably the size restriction on the wood.
That's curious.
I've never actually bought an instrument with this kind of issue, but if I do, I'll just tell them to throw out the fittings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or paint them black so they look like ebony.
Yeah.
Then you can scrape it off in your workshop for the next couple of days.
Yeah, it adds some antiquing to it too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's, you know, a bit of a issue for a lot of modern fittings, like we mentioned last time in the Amber video. They look so new and shiny and bright, but look at all those famous instruments. They have all these old fittings that are, you know, probably already like 100-year-old that it's been very well played in, so it kind of matches the same tone as the rest of the instruments.
Do you have any thoughts on this instrument?
Not really, I say. Not my area of expertise.
No, it doesn't appeal to me either, to be honest.
I mean,
sorry, go for it.
Sorry, I was going to say, because the previous instrument was estimated for 15,000 to 20,000 euro. I mean, it will be a decision between this and the Contreras, which you already know which choice everyone will probably go for.
Yeah. An Italian violin made by Maurizio Taglioli with a Strad label, made in Cremona, 2003. It bears the original label, 358. A certificate from Cremona Luteria. So there you go. It's a contemporary Italian instrument, straight from.
It's actually a little bit. Yeah, sorry that I kept interrupting you, because sometimes I do want to say something.
Oh, go for it.
But yeah, this is actually a living maker. He's pretty active on social media too.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Yep, a contemporary one.
I really liked his varnish and antiquing work. And his instruments are constructed on these classic models. So definitely a maker that I never really tried his instrument, but from the look of it, his stuff really shouldn't disappoint. Which I guess, considering the estimate, it does say that too.
You can. It's interesting actually. A lot of people really like this. You can see the gouge marks a little bit on the scroll. A lot of luthiers kind of appreciate seeing like elements of this.
Yeah.
So you can see that quite well on some of the Zygmuntowicz violins.
Mhm.
But yeah, so there's a potential for a contemporary Italian violin for someone. It's on the higher side, but not too bad. French violin by Jules Grandjean with a Strad label.
Also, a bit on the long side. There seems to be a crack to the eye of the treble side F-hole. Not too familiar with the maker, but it's a name that we see everywhere.
The picture of the scroll is like really weird. I'm kind of a bit confused by what's going on there. The angle, it almost looks like they've taken a photo of someone's like printed out picture of the scroll.
That could be it.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing. Oh well. Yeah, well, someone's interested in it anyway for some reason. So, yeah, I think we can not too exciting there.
And the thing with pictures and auctions, it doesn't matter how well the picture is taken, it will almost never reflect what the actual instrument look like, because when you look at it from a different angle, the varnish will give out a different color, a different texture to it. So to buy from auctions, my personal recommendation is to see a lot of them in real life, have a good mental image. So you kind of have to like construct what they will actually look like in real life and kind of in your head. That's a bit of a skill on its own.
Yeah, I think one thing that's quite interesting is that like when you have a contemporary instrument, at least anyway, where the makers provided the certificate, the pictures in the certificate color wise never look like the pictures on the auction website of the instrument.
Yeah.
So it's always quite a disparity.
And as a photographer myself, I gotta say, for example, this violin we're looking at, I would personally think that it's shot with the wrong focal length. So that for a lot of these instruments, the auction photographers don't necessarily know that much about photography, so you end up actually seeing a violin in a pretty weird shape that if you're trying to authenticate it, try to match it up with other instruments, sometimes it actually won't even match up. But not because the violin is off, it's actually just the way they're using the wrong lens, so that it's kind of warped, or the perspective is off.
Yeah, I guess you can see, looking at this anonymous late 18th century violin, that I suppose in an ideal world you want to see the front completely front on, and you don't really want to see the behind of the C bouts, I suppose. So I guess it depends what the auction house has available at the time. So an interesting violin without any label or marks. 356 back, so late 18th century violin there. Interesting arching. We'll go on to the next one. A German violin with a label saying Gio Battista de Gabrielli. 359 back with a bow, with an unphotographed bow.
I think the varnish looks really good. It really kind of gives out that rare instrument vibe.
Yeah.
So a lot of those Cremonese violins have these red varnish that have been worn off just right, and they end up looking very nice. And I think this will be one of them that it's been well used, well played. I was quite interested in this one, but it's still a little too long for my liking.
Okay, so it was on the list, but it didn't make the final cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's got some nice features about it for sure.
Another thing is, sometimes I look at these old instruments and I can tell the F hole has been tempered with, especially if you look at the bass side F hole below the wing. That's where a lot of people would open it up a little bit. Bit of a historical practice. I know people that still do this. It's horrible. Some of them will think that it make it sound better. Personally, I think that's complete nonsense. But it very, very unfortunately it happens on a lot of these instruments. This one, I think, has been tampered with.
On the F holes, yeah. Yeah, it does look like it's looks like it would have been a bit narrower.
Yeah.
Before.
It would have been, I feel like, much prettier before too. You can tell now it's like.
Yeah.
The book. If you don't mind, I'll tell you a very unfortunate story. On one of the Brompton's auction, there's just this beautiful, beautiful Paul Bailey violin. You know, everything's nice about it. It's estimated very cheap, very well made, typical Paul Bailey. But the F holes are just completely off. Someone just went in there with a knife, tried to enlarge it both below and above the F hole, and made it look just really ugly. So it kind of just ruined a beautiful, beautiful early 20th century, late 19th century French violin. So rumors, this is what I heard, certain American dealer actually did this on the Strad.
Right, okay.
I can't confirm that, but it's very unfortunate that people still do these things.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're watching and you're a budding luthier or a kind of person buying random stuff, don't fiddle with things. Leave them as they are.
I would say just, out of respect of another maker that lived a few hundred years ago, if there's something wrong with it, that's their problem. But your job is to restore, repair it to a point where you can bring out the most out of the instrument itself. But it's just unethical to alter someone else's work because you have a different opinion on it. But historically, it's absolutely acceptable. A lot of Strat has gone through regraduating, but from a modern perspective, it's kind of need to have that preserving mindset in.
Yep, definitely. Because I think what's like a Bohemian violin. I need to look at it a bit more closely, but that has had its F holes like repositioned. So, yeah. To be fair, looking at it, the F holes originally were so close to the C bouts and in like an odd position, and in a way, the new position is actually a bit more believable, but it's still unfortunate.
Yeah.
But there we go. That's the way. If people didn't do that, how would we be able to warn other people against not doing it? So
yeah.
A French violin by Falaise, with the label L. Falaise 1792. Background of a room with beautiful irregular waves. Interesting. Like that translation. Yep. 3,000 to 4,000 euros on the estimate. It's been well used, it seems.
I guess it's nice that we're seeing a lot of actual 18th century work that are in pretty good condition.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, this actually seems in not too bad condition. Not sure about the varnish, but otherwise I think we can carry on. Another French violin made by Fent. Wormholes it has. 355 back.
I'm sorry about that. I promise I should let you finish like introducing it. But I was gonna say that we talked about this, or I thought I would bid on it. But I have a little thought on it, that I think the auction they did suggest is made by phone, which actually they mean made by this guy called PX, not PX, sorry, Francois Font, sorry. So this guy called Francois Font.
Okay.
But if you compare it to the other work by this maker, a lot of them have just this beautiful golden ground varnish. It's almost look like an Italian instrument, but this one is covered in just deep red. So I was a little suspicious whether this is just one that's been very well preserved or revarnished. It kind of just, personally, I'm not too sure about it. But
okay.
Supposedly, this maker does, fetch quite a price on bigger auctions. So, potentially could be a good investment.
Yeah.
Maybe if I convince, if I convince myself, I will still go for it.
Yeah, maybe have a look at a few more pictures of other kind of ones with provenance and check some of the attributes and see if you can match it up. But yeah, it's a low estimate so far. No one's bidded, so you're still in the running. Another French violin, bearing a label Gavanese Saint Thomas de Louvre in Paris. Orange brown varnish, 358mm with a bow, 1 to 1,200 euros. So some of the pictures are a bit inconsistent in this auction.
For some of these auctions, it happens on quite some other ones too, that you have all these nice pictures and all of a sudden just have a few that's maybe shot on the phone. Yeah. Either they forgot to take a picture for it, a lot came in late, or someone asked for more pictures. No idea.
Yeah. This is interesting. Look kind of looks like bird's eye on the neck. Don't see that often.
Yeah. Well, I say overall the wood choice is not that exciting on this one.
No. It's fairly standard.
Mm.
Another French violin, Mircor. Label J letter. 360 back again. Giant backed instruments for giants. You would have thought with everyone getting taller that people would probably get used to these instruments.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe in 20 years these 360s will be...
That's what I'm betting on, honestly. That's one of my thoughts. I'm like, everyone buy up the super ridiculously long instruments that are kind of cheap, relatively cheap, because when everyone becomes a giant, then everyone's going to want those instruments. That's my logic, which is probably why I'm very poor. So
yeah, well, you're playing the long game, so...
Yeah, exactly. I'm not a businessman, sadly, but yeah, no one ever take any business advice from me. It's the worst idea. A viola violin. Interesting translation. So a viola. Well, actually, is this like kind of somewhere in between? Is this what they're trying to say? I'm a bit confused by the...
362 could be a violin. I mean, I did a little research on this because that one day I had this brilliant question on if you're a violist and if you're young, are you supposed to buy a fractional viola or a big violin? I guess in this case, it could be both.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the ribs maybe, well, they look maybe a little bit bigger than normal, but not massively.
Yeah.
But okay, well, yeah, either like a large violin or a very small viola. So see, that is quite small for a viola, though.
I was gonna say that because even it seems huge for a violin, that would be a tiny, tiny viola.
Yeah, I mean, I've picked up a couple of violas that are like 383 and stuff like that, and even that's really small for a viola, I think.
Mhm.
So, well, I don't know, maybe
And there
interesting.
seems to be some neck issue on this, where it's common issue. I said this many times. It's unfortunate that you can't see this on the other violins because they never show you the side. But on this one, the only time they show you the side, you can see the heel of the I think they call it the neck clearance or something. It's a little too low. Very common issue on older instruments. So what's happening is that you have a very short bridge on this one.
Mm, okay.
The projection height is a little too low for the fingerboard.
Well, there you go. An interesting kind of, you can decide what you want it to be, a viola or a violin. French violin made a copy of Maggini. Bum, bum, bum. Let's have a quick look at this. What a lovely label. Some cracks there. I think this is in unexciting territory.
It's funny when I see the word French violin copy of Maggini, I thought this thing would be like 364 millimeter, but then I look at 358 and it's
Yeah,
actually very rare to see a French Maggini copy with the right dimensions.
yeah. So yeah, if you're into this aesthetic, then this is a viable instrument potentially. French violin made by J. Levesque, 1920, 357. Yep.
Nothing too special.
Yeah, not unpleasant. In the colour, I don't mind the colour, but nothing too outrageous.
Mm.
Another French violin, anonymous, 18th century. Traces of worm needs to be restored, 356. That's quite a good length. Repaired by J. Poitier, 1897. J.B. Poitier instead.
This seems to be another one of those 18th century violins. There are a lot of 18th centuries here, which is, I
Yeah,
thought.
I like to see that, for sure. But I'd like to see them at lower prices.
And if you look at the way that the fingerboard's been fit, there's, I don't know if this is an original scroll, but this sort of a wedge.
Yeah,
uh,
there's a
It could
good.
suggest, yeah, it could suggest either a Baroque neck, but they forcibly put a wedge there just so that you can put a fingerboard up to modern standard, which is a bad neck. They're gonna have to do something.
Mm,
I had a violin that the fingerboard projection is a little off, so my luthier friend very, very nicely did a wedge for me, and it ended up working pretty well. It would otherwise have been a pretty expensive repair, but a lot of these instruments, the most optimal solution would be redoing the neck. But of course, we always try to avoid that as much as possible, but that's pretty pricey.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is true.
And the fingerboard has been played quite a bit, so you see some string mark on it. It's
Yeah,
just something that I can't see the side because I feel like most setup issues are very visible on the side or on the
mm.
front. They'll look somewhat the same.
Yeah. I've been told that sometimes it's quite a good sign to see this when an instrument has signs of play wear, which means that it could be a viable instrument. Either that or someone didn't have the money to get a better instrument.
But
But
it's surprising sometimes seeing these violins are, they need a lot of work on setup, and just imagine someone actually probably played it for many years. I just can't imagine, playing a violin so off for that many years.
mm,
I guess we just have maybe much higher standard than a few years back. People will play on anything.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you kind of made do with what you had, really. You adjusted to make it work. German violin made by Andreas Ferdinand Mayer. with the label, with box and bow, papers from Chardon FE, various breaks. It doesn't actually say the length of back on that one either.
I guess this is a nice one. One of your standard 18th century. Would this be a German? I think.
Yeah, it says German. Yeah, the scroll's quite interesting on this one. It's quite wide at the center, but I like it.
Yeah, I feel like if you're a dealer, they're just gonna pick up all of them. Because this really is an auction where you can pick up all these nice old instruments in mass. That's a word for it.
I really like these German old 18th century labels, the thick kind of font.
Yeah, I think they may have. Yeah, it's just some of these old labels are. I think that is this old method of printing them, make them end up looking. They're not handwritten, but they're not printed by like a printer, so they all look quite. So each letter they're not perfectly aligned, as say from like a computer. So they all looking pretty interesting.
And
the setup looks decent.
Oh, on the 18th century one, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't know you.
Oh no, sorry. Yeah. No, it looks like it could be viable for sure, or maybe ready to go with little work. Yeah, it's. I think the scroll was quite cute in a way.
Yeah.
So now we're on to a modern viola, 390 back. It's a bit more normal, labelled Laurientis Bellafontana, 1947.
No opinion, because I don't know much about violas.
No, nor do I. It kind of looks to me that maybe there's something's happened to the varnish on the back, but maybe that is the way that it was. Just looks a bit different in colour to the top, but maybe not. And we'll carry on. Another viola, Paris 1927, that craquelle that some people really like.
That's crazy. Honestly, I've never seen a person that's particularly into this. I have seen people that play an instrument with cracks like this. I mean, for me, it's just, it depends on how you interpret it. If you think they look like thunder, that would be a cool thing to have, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the back's quite impressive, really. It does look like a thunderstorm. It does remind me of tiger bread that you get in the supermarket, though.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's just making me hungry, really. It's making me want to eat a violin. Or a viola, sorry.
Yeah, I heard a joke where, if you go to a violin shop, they will hang all these violins up, and they all have this kind of orange color, and it just reminds people of Peking duck. And people get really hungry when they walk into a violin shop.
I think I wrote something on a forum the other day and made some joke about something like eating a violin, and then I thought, well, there's YouTube. Someone has to have done a video of them eating a violin. Yeah. And literally, I found a video that was posted like about a week previously. So it's probably like 2 weeks old now, and it literally is a guy eating like part of his violin from the F-hole. And you just think, wow, you can find anything in YouTube.
Yeah.
61, another viola, labelled Rossi Giuseppe, 409 back, so it's getting a bit bigger. Not huge, but bigger. This has some funny varnish stripping going on, I think, at the back.
A lot of violins have varnish, like patchy varnish looking like this. I don't know if someone was intentionally sanding them or...
Yeah. Yeah, something's a bit strange on that one. Here we're on to some cellos. What's your cello game like?
Similar to my viola game, if not worse, because it's like whatever I don't play, I just hardly have any interest in them. I mean, I know there's, yeah, there's some nice cellos to buy, but I feel like shipping them will be such a headache.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I prefer violins, really. So here's a kind of anonymous cello. Seems to have an Amati label, something 1927. Let's have a just quick look.
Oh, it's marginal. It's one of those French instruments. It's
kind of workshopy trade thing.
Yeah, it has a nice black lining on the scroll as well, that's been worn off.
It doesn't actually look too bad, to be fair.
Yeah, it's very interesting that I feel like my personal experience, very limited, don't really know much, but it just seems like these French and German cello and bass are more desirable than in the violin world than, like, say, a German or French violin.
Right, okay, yeah.
If you look at the price record of a lot of these, what we consider them lower end makers, their cello would always sell for some insane amount.
Well, I guess just by numbers, there's far less cellos around than there are violins. So I guess is where there's actually quite a lot of Italian violins around. There aren't quite so many Italian cellos, so then you have to go quite quickly to the next level available, I suppose.
Yeah, or they're probably more cellos than violas.
Yes, quite possibly. That is true. Because they cut all the violas down to be violins.
Yeah.
Okay, another cello with a stamp Lane A Paris 720. It's a funky back. We can move on from that. Another cello. I do feel sorry for kind of cello players and kind of or cellists and viola players. They don't have the same amount of choice as the violinists.
Yeah, and I feel like it will be so much harder to buy and sell cellos because every time a cello is getting moved, there's just so much work to put into properly pack it and ship it.
Oh yeah, they constantly need work. As soon as the weather changes, you just get a buzz straight away.
Yeah,
it's just always open seams all the time, and it's just
because they're so big and they're glued up wood, so they're definitely naturally unstable instruments. And oh, look at this! It's a huge crack.
Yeah, it's quite beautiful, really. You could keep a letter in there.
Yeah, that's
just for you to keep like a love letter in.
Like a flower in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's art. That's an intentional crack. So yeah, there's quite quite a lot of work to be done on this, I guess. Hence the kind of fairly low thing. So marked shower Paris. Oh, bloody! I give up on trying to pronounce all these things. It's got some wormholes. It's got a lot of issues. So
I'm a little confused by what's going on the fingerboard. Is it like someone was scraping it? It's like a I don't know. It seems like the whole left side has been. I mean, something happened to it.
Oh, that's the Romberg. That's a intentionally angled fingerboard that was really popular at some stage. You still see lots of them around. So it's kind of like a flat which goes off at an angle. It's meant to help kind of for kind of pressing that string down a bit kind of easier. That's what that angle is.
Yeah. See, these are the specific cello stuff that I just really no idea about.
I mean, you see a lot of cellos with these Romberg fingerboards still on, but gradually people try and remove them now. They're not so popular as they were. But yeah, look that up. Look up the Romberg fingerboard, and you'll see kind of the person that kind of invented it and everything.
It's interesting that I feel like people are a lot more experimental with string instruments than 100 years back.
Yeah, definitely. Another cello here with the label Augusto Lorni 757. Not super excited by any of the cellos so far. Some of the earlier ones were better. And let's see. 3/4 modern, we don't need to look at that. Another cello. But let's have a quick search. Interesting back on that. 68, lot 68.
It's funny, a lot of these cellos, even older ones, seem so new.
Yeah, well, they might well be, to be honest.
Because you think for an instrument this big, they've probably gone through even more than violins.
Yeah.
But there's so many beat up violins around.
This is cute, the quartet table. This is what you need.
Yeah. It's it's a nice furniture to have when you have friends around playing. When you have friends over playing quartet.
Exactly.
And I like how it always kind of just shoves into the table. That's nice.
I think we can skip past that. This we don't need to see. Yeah, we don't need to. Oh, we're on to bows now.
I mean, we are almost to the end of page 2. Page 2 ends at lot 119. So still got a bit to go, but.
Yeah, well, let's keep going for a little bit, and then we can have a break and split it into 2. Otherwise, we'll kill any of the people that might actually watch this video. They'll just be like, "What's going on?" So let's see if we can go through a few of these bows. So I think actually, do you know what? This is a great idea. This is perfect. This is what every picture of a bow should start off with. This with like the head and the frog next to each other.
Yeah.
I really think is quite good. I think that's a good idea, because now we can just go through them really quickly. So a German violin bow made for Joseph Verdral, bearing the stamps. So there you go. That was nice. Another violin in the style of von Klaus. 46 grams, 722 mil, French violin bow. An older bow there. It's quite nice. Another violin bow, Sarasate Maitre. Violin bow in Mircourt, JTL. So that's a kind of cheap bow. Let's get our translation back on. So here we go. Violin bow made by Victor Francois Fetique with the iron mark. Violin bow by Fetique. I think that seems like quite a reasonable price for Fetique. See, 3 bids on that already. I think that will go over the estimate there for that particular maker.
There are these bow makers I've heard the names of, and I'm just like, I don't know how much it will actually worth, because I know nothing about bows. And how do you even tell if it's by a maker? For a violin, I guess there's so much things to look at to kind of judge the problems. If you know a little bit about bows, I guess you can teach me a little on how to Authenticated bow, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, I think you need to look at things like kind of the shape of the head and the
Hmm.
chamfers going into the head, the general material, the frog styling, the materials, the button. The other key thing you really want to look at, I suppose, especially if you're looking for a fine bow, is you want to see the thread. If it's like a more modern bow, the thread of the screw mechanism. You want to also see the mortise as well.
Hmm.
Stamps can be important if it's a maker that actually stamped their bows, but a
Hmm.
lot of the good makers didn't necessarily stamp their bows. Like Tort,
Hmm.
like Francois Tort, I don't believe ever stamped any bows.
Uh,
So you've got to look at other traits. It's a bit, yeah, it's like violins. You've just got to see enough of them and understand the kind of the traits. And I don't really know. Um, Enough either myself, really. I mean, I'm still learning on violins, but I kind of pick up a few things here and there. So here's a French violin bow in Mirecourt with the Vorin stamp, so it's not too crazy.
it's
um,
about these ivory frogs, because wouldn't you? I feel like for older ones, there shouldn't be that big of a trouble when you try to import them, because I know that a lot of them use actual ivory, and that's a bit problematic in general.
I think whatever the Ivory Act came in, if it's like 1972 or 1974 or something like that, as long as you can kind of prove with documentation that the ivory was taken off an elephant before that date and it's
Mhm.
part of a musical instrument, I think you can kind of take it around with you, but you need to have some kind of certification on that. I think that's a difficult thing, proving that.
And I think a lot of modern bow maker use, I don't know what kind of fake ivory they will use, or even so-called mammoth. Um,
Well, no, I mean that is the thing that a lot of the makers like I don't honestly. So mammoth tusk is not protected under CITES because mammoths have been extinct for however long, and
yeah.
actually there's a lot of mammoth tusks in Siberia.
Mhm.
So actually getting hold of mammoth is not that difficult.
Mhm.
It might be slightly expensive, but it's not that difficult. So, and I think there is difference in the structure of mammoth. So you can just claim that it's mammoth, and that will get you through really because it's mammoth isn't on CITES restrictions at all.
Yeah.
Personally, I would opt against using any of that. I wouldn't ever think, oh right, so I can't use elephants because that's kind of
Yeah.
against the law, so why don't I just use like dead animals like that? I don't understand the logic of that. I don't see why in this day and age we need to use any type of kind of mammoth or ivory or anything like that.
I guess the tip of the bow, aren't they normally made of that sort of material?
Well, I don't think so necessarily anymore. I mean, maybe kind of like bone, but I don't think you need to use that kind of. You can use synthetic material now, and it's also just easier for people for traveling for it to be synthetic material. I
Yeah.
mean, I've made a couple of frogs out of corian, which is like a resin which has been designed to like mimic marble. So there's lots of different types and things, and you can get like ones which do actually look like kind of the streaks of marble. Then you can get like plain white, cream, red, like black, all the colours. But the thing of that is it polishes up really nice and can actually make a really nice frog. So I would personally um, rather use a synthetic material than an animal product. In fact, I'd like I'm not vegan or vegetarian, but I would, where possible, avoid using an animal product. And I think I probably will investigate at some stage looking at synthetic bow hair, which does exist. So
Yeah.
yeah, for me personally, I'd rather avoid using
Yeah.
animal if I could. But some people love it; they love to use a bit of mammoth for whatever reason.
Yeah, the thing is, it's a bit of a traditional field where people want to use the materials that have been traditionally used, but a lot of them are just not sustainable materials. Some of them are just straight up unethical. Um,
Exactly, yeah. And if
yeah,
it's not actually required for the function of it,
yeah,
why use it? It just seems to me like,
Yeah.
sometimes I just think let's move on from that,
Yeah.
personally. But
I,
each to their own.
yeah. I mean, Pernambuco is a huge topic because there technically are woods that are more sustainable that you can replace them with. It's already illegal to harvest new Pernambuco, so a lot of these bow makers they stored up a lot of Pernambuco blanks somewhere in France. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I did read some things on this recently. Like there are new plantations of Pernambuco, which, if they're controlled, you can actually harvest it.
Mhm.
So there are some people that are kind of getting that, and apparently it takes about 30 years to
Mhm.
grow a tree which can be harvested enough to make wood for a bow.
Mhm.
So there are some things going there, but yeah, I agree. I mean, I like to experiment with different wood as well, and I'm sure there's some other woods which are also viable. I know there's some makers that use like a wood called camel thorn, and there's other woods that you can use as well. So definitely worth investigating. So it's a Miyako bow here with Pernambuco stick and ivory frog there. 50 grams without the hair, so should probably come in about right, maybe a tiny bit heavy. Another violin bow by JTL. We see a lot of these we can go past. Another Miyako one. This is stamped taut, so as they're saying, like, your taut never stamped any bows. So this is people just having fun. Another violin bow stamped taut. Anonymous violin bow. This actually looks quite interesting, this one. Marked Vorin, Paris. You can look at the wear. You can see here the wear of that stick. Someone has used that quite a lot.
Yeah.
And there's a
But
bit of a nasty crack on the frog there.
but the thing with this is that a lot of these boats have been used for 100 years. I mean, if they're boats that get worn off, can you restore it or because a lot of these famous boats have been used by famous makers. You don't see this kind of wear.
Hmm.
I'm not sure. What would you say about this kind of stuff?
I think this is like very common for
Mm.
like if a bow's being used quite substantially. Like this, I think usually you'd have some kind of leather protector here. As soon as you start to see that you're starting to lose to wear the stick a bit, you would put a leather protector on. And to me, this just looks like someone's been kind of playing it a lot and not had like that much of an interest in protecting the stick with like a leather and stuff, so it's been left to wear away a bit too much. I think ordinarily if you had a bow and you had it taken to be rehaired and your kind of rehairer was looking into your best interest, then they'd probably advise you to kind of put a leather over this part to stop you from wearing it away, and then you just wear away the leather instead, and then you just gradually replace the leather.
Mhm.
But I mean, like the thumb projection on the frog, like, that's something that you probably will end up wearing to some degree. So,
Is that a crack on the front?
I think so here at the front, yeah, there looks like a bit of a crack there. It definitely needs a bit of attention, but it's an interesting looking bow. It's definitely would be worth looking at in person a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing about bows is that if you're a dealer, if you know exactly what kind of bow you're looking at, that you may be able to sell, you should be fine buying from auctions. But if you're a player of any sort, there's just no way you can buy your favorite bow off an auction from some pictures.
No, well, I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a risk. Yeah, you really need to try it with your instrument, really. I mean, luckily, a lot of the auction houses, under normal circumstances, you can try them. And I've been to Teresio auction in London where you could trial the bows, but obviously, given the current situation, that's not so easy, unfortunately.
And in my case, really, the only violin auction in the U.S. that are they consistently put up good stuff is Teresio. All the other ones are either in UK or in this case in France. Which I can't just. I kept traveling to Europe and try out bows. I know people would do that, but it's just not my fun. Yeah. And what I heard is that even sometimes they'll tell you how heavy it is, but even that's very relative. You could have a very heavy bow that feels light.
Yeah, I mean it's like weight relative to balance and to kind of the flexibility of the stick. So, and also it depends on like the muscle structure of the player and the style of playing and the instrument you're using as well. So there's quite a lot of variables really there to look at. So here is another violin bow, probably by Gillette, with a stamp Dupuis Paris, 59 grams. It's getting a little bit on the heavier side, but it looks like quite a nice bow. Another violin bow, probably by Eugene Cuneau, stamp J Hill, 55 grams without the hair. I think that will end up probably coming a bit over weight, under 60 grams, probably for the best. Here's a Baroque bow without the button, exotic wood, it says. That's a good description. I'm not even going to attempt to try and work out what wood that is. It could be many different things, but there's a lot of people that would be interested in some of these kind of older bows. Definitely needs quite a bit of restoration, but it could be an interesting one there. They don't come up that frequently. Here's another violin bow miracle one, 53 grams. It's fairly standard. Another violin bow.
Frog.
Yeah, that's quite curious, isn't it? Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like kind of shell or something like that. Yeah, I haven't seen many like that before. Doesn't have a very high estimate, so I don't think they're leading anything to that. Another violin bow by a Miracle with the Morizot label or brand.
Looking at how cheap these older bows are, well, I paid a huge sum for a modern bow.
Yeah, I think you can get some really good deals on some of these older bows. I mean, a modern bow by like a proper maker, like handmade, I guess is going to cost you, 4,000 euros, pounds, whatever, kind of a bit more in dollars maybe, something around that, or more than that even. I think that's the kind of going rate, I guess.
The description says Ferdinand Louis Morizot. It says it's made by this guy. Then here it says Baron and Apocryph stamp L Morizot. So do they think it's actually made by Morizot?
Yeah.
Not sure what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. Sometimes it's a bit vague.
But I guess from their position, they have hundreds of laws to put in. They always make a mistake here and there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you always have to kind of look at what you see on screen, really, and look at the description and make your own decision up. Really, no one's ever 100% correct. Violin Bow in Germany with a Bazar label. Another one made by Celestine Clasquin with the stamp. That's quite a nice bow. It looks in pretty good condition. Another Miracle bow, marked Villiom. Looks like that has a bit of wear. So like this is like, so that is like the kind of the thumb leather that you might normally have just for like a kind of player thing, but you also sometimes will get leather protectors here above the frog, So that's the difference, like protecting the top of the stick above the frog, because that is an area that will wear quite
Yeah.
commonly.
Hmm.
Another violin bow by Victor Francois Fatigue. So this is they're saying this one's a genuine Fatigue, unlike the other one where they was kind of wasn't committed. So it's a nice bow with a nice price. Here we go. So getting
Picot.
a Francois Picat. So we're getting into the Amoret wood. So that's basically like snake wood. It's got a Raffin certificate. So, I mean, this is probably quite a nice bow potentially for the right person with the right muscles and the right instrument.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this auction house, I'm not sure if they still do it. I think they do it that they will issue you a certificate. You just kind of have to ask them. It used to be like if you buy something that's more than a certain amount, they'll write you a certificate. I just don't know how much weight an Apollium certificate has. It's like their experts will write you a certificate in his name, but I just don't know. I just don't think that has a lot of weight to it. But nice to have a guarantee, I guess.
Well, if it was free, it's better than nothing, I guess.
Yeah.
So here's a violin bow by R.M. Militant. Has a crack apparently.
It's Milan.
Militant, yeah, sorry.
That's a famous person.
Yeah.
I remember there was an auction where he sold like a tool that's when he died, I think. I remember this guy. There was an auction that sold off his full collection with some really nice stuff.
Oh, right, okay. Interesting. It's another violin bow by Francois Nicolas Vorin. This is a genuine kind of Vorin, which is going to be big money. 51 grams without the hair. That probably looks about right.
It's a beautiful bow for sure.
Yeah, you can kind of tell straight away, can't you? You can see, just look at the sweep, look at the curve, and just look at the quality of the wood. You can see it's a nice bow. Another violin bow, a Mircore. Looks okay. Transitional bow here, so that's kind of in between the Baroque and classical period.
Your kind.
Yeah, this is quite interesting. I mean, I've heard it said before that at certain periods of time you could go into the orchestra and there might be someone, like, there's no necessarily, people think that it goes like, oh, Baroque stopped, then everyone went to classical, then everyone went modern. It's not like that at all. It's like so bizarre, the transitions. Like at one time, it's possible you could have been in an orchestra where there could have been a group of violinists and one violinist may have been playing using a Baroque bow, one may have had some kind of transitional bow in between, someone could have been using a classical bow, and someone else could have had more like a modern style bow.
Yeah.
So like it's completely, there's a lot of transitioning that happened. So this,
if you think about it, it's always this, a few influential makers that comes out making their own personal model, but end up just standardizing it. And it's funny because I would say in the history of Europe, in the history of music, it's always the Germans that are standardizing things. But in the violin world, it's the French that standardize both violin and the bows. I thought that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. No, it's actually quite curious. This particular bow I don't think is really that exciting, hence the estimate. But it'll probably go for way above that just because it's kind of older bow and there not so many of them about. It's another violin bow, German violin bow. Nothing too crazy. Another violin bow. Exotic wood stick. So it basically means they don't know what it is. It's good. Another exotic bow. Another violin bow to be restored. This one's kind of interesting there. It's a shame actually on the bows that they don't show like the kind of underside of the frog. That's sometimes quite good to see the mortise and things like that. It's quite important.
That's something that Amber does that's really great. That they take down, they disassemble the whole thing. They're really trying to show you every detail.
It is quite important, especially if it's like an expensive bow, because like a lot of cracks can appear in the mortise. You can obviously see this is in a bit of a state, but obviously if you're trying to determine if something's genuine or not, then it's important to see all the parts which show the working process of the maker, and that's, you know, the mortise is a key part of that.
102 seem to be really popular. I don't know what people think that bow is. I have no idea.
So it said that 102 was really popular, is it?
Yeah, it already has 4 bids. I'm not sure why. That seems like a bow that needs a lot of work on it.
Well, it's it does look a bit interesting, yeah. It does look a bit curious.
It needs a new tip. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
some repairs here as well. So, but yeah, maybe they think it's something more than it is. It does have some kind of style to it. So, yeah, someone obviously sees something in it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Another violin bow by Ari, France. It's another low one. I mean, look, any of these bows that are quite cheap, there's a few bids on. People want a bargain, don't they? Violin bow by Paysold. Pernambuco. Doesn't look too exciting. Another violin bow from the Lebert workshop. Anonymous violin bow with what remains of some kind of ivory frog. It's had a bit of a hard life, that one. It's trying to get back to its elephant. 3/4 bow.
The 3/4 was pretty badly made, I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of skipped through those ones, to be honest, but yeah, it doesn't look too good. Here's a kind of viola, well, it says French violin bow, but
That would be a Viola Bow.
yeah, I think there's potentially, yeah, I'm not sure, because it's 60 grams without hair. It's going to put it to near like 70, so I think that's just a translation error there. Yeah, that should be a Viola Bow. Here's a Viola Bow by Paulos. 73 grams. Here is one which could be a violin or viola bow, which I think I mentioned before is 100% possible. You get bows that are just somewhere in the middle, a bit like the violin viola. You can decide what you want it to be. Do you want it to be a heavy violin bow or a light viola bow, basically? Here's a cello bow. Actually, kind of curious, that, in an odd way. It's almost psychedelic, the pattern of the wood on the head there. Another cello bow. Okay. Another cello bow. A couple of violin bows. Some more violin bows. You can go past those. More violin bows. A whole load of violin bows. More violin bows. Oh, we've got a violin. French violin. Made in Mirecourt. So we're in the budget zone now. This is where I come into my own. It's where I become the man with power.
This one and another viola actually concludes page 2.
Oh, does it? So this one, a half size here, we can ignore that. So I think then, how many more?
Well, we have a few violins on page 3. Then there's a bunch of guitars and stuff. So
should we just finish off the violins and then we can kind of stop?
Yeah, there's still a few violins, quite a few of them, but should we find them? Yeah.
I mean, or we can take a break and save people and then continue another stage.
part two, I guess.
Yeah, we can start on 120. We can start on page 2, and what better way to start another video on a medio fino violin?
Yeah.
So I
Okay
think,
then.
yeah. Any thoughts on this auction so far before we sign off on this first part?
Uh, I think it has, quite a good selection of things. I mean, this is an auction house that doesn't happen very often, so they really take their time and collect some quite interesting items. You don't have big names like in some other auctions in the U.S. or U.K., but I think in general, from a bit of a English-speaking country's point of view, these German and French auction houses you can pick up some pretty good deals. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, no, I agree. I think this auction actually has some really interesting stuff.
Mm.
Um, Lots of 18th century violins, which is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's been some great stuff so far. I'm impressed with the pictures. We haven't really looked so in depth at the pictures this time, but there's definitely some interesting ones there.
Mhm.
I think for me, um, the um, the pick of this half of the video has to be the Jose Contreras violin. Really,
Yeah.
I think that's the one. Maybe let's just quickly go back to that. See if we can go there without destroying the whole of the internet.
I think it's lot 40.
Lot 40, is it?
Yeah.
You know that one because you've got it there. You're just you got
Yeah.
that one on saved in your favorites.
Yeah. I even downloaded all the pictures for future reference.
Oh, okay, that's good.
I feel like they could really run a few articles on this, write a few more stories on the life of the maker. Teresa does this all the time when they
Mm.
have a rare maker that's coming up on their auction. They will write an article on them to kind of pump up the price.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think Contreras is definitely worth more than what it's going for at the moment.
yeah, definitely agree. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's look out for. So if you watch this video before the auction ends, then this is probably a good bet. But don't outbid Max because he's going to try and sell all his clothes and anything else that he has to be able to buy this instrument. So don't stop him from fulfilling his dreams.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Well,
it's a good instrument. Right,
okay.
okay. Well, I think this has been part 1 of Apollium. Obviously, it's takes a long time to go through, with especially with Max's in-depth knowledge, especially in the French instruments. So thank you very much, Max, for taking the time to talk with us. And I
Well,
think look forward to speaking with you again on the next part of the auction for part 2.
absolutely. Well, see you guys later.
Yep. Ciao. Many thanks for tuning in to the Musical Instrument Investigator. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please like, subscribe and turn on notifications, and watch out for the next video coming soon.